Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real Estate Right Now, where we talk about real estate matters that matter to you. My name is Jay Izzo, and we are live here from Linda Craft Team Studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina, part of the Greater Research Triangle Park. Today's show, we're going to talk about, here's how I like to think of it, mold, lead, asbestos. Oh my. How do we remediate that? How do we handle that? Well, I have a great guest. Never been on the show, drove forever to get here, and I'm so grateful. His name is Paul Oxendine. He is the founder, owner, CEO, president of Carolinas Environmental. So, Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Paul, tell people what Carolinas Environmental does and what are the different things that they cover.
We're a full-service industrial remediation asbestos company. We have two websites that are dedicated to asbestos. One of them is called Asbestos Extreme. And then we have one called Remediating, which is for underground storage tanks. And we've come across a lot of that in the Charlotte area lately. Older homes, people are buying up the older homes. We're dealing with popcorn ceilings. So we developed these websites to specifically address those issues, especially in underground storage tanks. There's a lot of misinformation, homeowners versus commercial. So sometimes people don't get the correct information on really what they need to do. So we try to make sure that everybody gets the correct information and, try to be competitive in the field with some of the other companies as well.
So what area do you cover? Because it's a pretty big area that you cover. So how far do you cover?
We cover southeastern United States.
Okay, so the entire southeast United States.
Yeah, we'll go anywhere. It doesn't really matter. We have clients that are located in several different areas. We do work for some of the banks, and we travel for them as well. But right now, when I say southeast, you're basically looking at Virginia, down to Florida, maybe out to the Mississippi. But these are jobs, when we do these jobs, these are usually jobs we've contracted through somebody else. These are our clients that's taking us out there. Mainly, we focus on the North Carolina area when it comes to the Asbestos Extreme website and when it comes to the Remediating website.
Let's talk about tanks for a second, because you brought up that there's a lot of misinformation in regards to understanding tanks,
right?
Because there's a lot of homes, or I should say a significant amount of homes, the older, that had buried tanks, right, for fuel,
right?
And then of course, there's gas stations that had tank issues,
right?
Let's talk about the tank issue. What is some of the misinformation, and what is some of the corrective things that you do handling tanks underground?
North Carolina has two types of tanks, basically. They're regulated, non-regulated. Homeowner tanks are non-regulated fuel oil tanks. Now, if you had a farm and you had tanks on the farm, that could fall up under a different guideline as well, but they were probably regulated. But if they were, all you have to do is go to the website and find out. But basically what North Carolina asks you to do as a homeowner, if you have an underground storage tank, is one, make sure that you've pumped all the product out of it if you're not using it. And then if you want to fill it in or remove it, you have those options. But basically all North Carolina asks you to do is make sure that if you're not using your tank, it doesn't have any product in it. You don't see any visible signs of leakage or anything like that. So they're not really asking you to do anything with it.
Really? So it's just got to be empty.
It doesn't really even have to be empty.
Really?
North Carolina is not, when we say non-regulated, now you as a buyer come in to buy the house and you have an underground storage tank, naturally, you're probably going to want to do some soil testing. You want to see if there's product in that tank. You want to do all these testing before you buy the home. Now, if you do this soil testing and this test comes back positive for petroleum release, then the state would get involved. And you would have to make sure that you clean it up according to state regulations. Okay,
so how often do you have to deal with these underground tank issues? How often does that occur for you?
We do about three a month.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's pretty. I didn't think it would be that high. So it's pretty significant.
Yeah, we do. Well, actually, the USTs, we get more phone traffic with those than anything. People going out there getting ready to purchase a house, they want to talk about, hey, what we need to do. So we try to inform them. you really don't have to do anything with that tank unless you decide to buy the house and you want to remove it. If you remove it, you want to make sure you don't have contamination, stuff like that.
Do you handle the contamination issues too?
We do.
What does that entail?
Once you take the soil sample, if you determine that there's a contamination there, you basically dig the contaminated dirt out and haul it to a certified landfill until it's clean.
Okay.
And we do the soil testing as we go. And at this point, once you may dig out, usually if it's a small tank like that, you may get 2 or 3 truckloads out of there.
Wow.
So you could get substantial amount of contaminated soil.
And then you got to replace all that.
And then you have to replace everything, backfill the hole, things like that.
All right, let's move on to asbestos.
Okay.
Where do you find the most asbestos in homes or commercial properties? Where do you see it mostly?
In the homes, a lot of it's in the ceilings, popcorn ceilings, anything pre-1978 suspect, anything pre-60s, the drywall, mud, things like that. So the older a home gets, the more areas you have for asbestos. Mastic around old chimney penetrations through the roofs, flooring again, vinyl.
Okay,
tile.
talk to me about the flooring piece, because that interested me when you mentioned the flooring. How does the asbestos get into the flooring? Help understand that.
The vinyl they used back in those days were made from asbestos, or not always the vinyl, the glue or the mastic that held it to the floor would actually have asbestos in it as well.
Really?
So 90% of the time it was the mastic if it was the linoleum itself. But if it's square floor tiles, it depends on the year that they were made. And if it's a 9x9 floor tile, you can pretty much figure that's always going to be asbestos.
Really?
Yeah.
And you said something to me. It's like when it comes to asbestos, it's like you said pre-1980 to me, is that you kind of have to pay attention to these things. And so popcorn ceilings, flooring, and then you said something around the windows?
Caulking. A lot of older windows, if they have the original windows, sometimes the caulking around those windows was asbestos.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Same thing with the roof penetrations, all that black mastic and stuff you see on them.
Yeah.
If that's been there since the roof was, it could be layered over, but it's still there. You'd have to test for stuff like that.
Okay. So how many, I got to ask, because it just, how many popcorn ceilings do you think you do a month?
We actually don't do as much as you think.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be high.
No, I'm sitting here trying to think. I think this maybe we have we have 3 that's right now that we're trying to get contracted and get on schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So in that particular case, when I start thinking about it, it depends. But we get a lot of traffic on it. We get a lot of people calling, asking questions about it, and I always tell them, if it's popcorn ceiling, I'd be suspect. If it's pre-1980 or 1980 and down.
So what if they don't do it, right? If you don't do anything about these issues, right? What are the consequences?
Well, the popcorn ceiling is usually a friable material. That material, and when you say friable, that's a type of material that's, if you're up there and you're messing with it, you're releasing fibers. You're releasing asbestos fibers.
So you change out the ceiling fan and
you're releasing fibers.
Okay.
Right.
And so, and that fiber release, now I'm putting asbestos in the air and I'm breathing in asbestos. Is that how it works?
Those are questions that I think would be better answered.
Okay.
All I'm saying is, you have a popcorn ceiling has asbestos on it. Okay. Right. That's a friable material.
Yeah.
If you're up there messing around with it and it crumbles and it gets dusty, which it will, then you're releasing those asbestos fibers and they're falling. Okay.
And you may not be able to notice them actually.
If you see, there'll be the dust on your fingers, things like that. So you're releasing fibers into the air.
Okay.
And at that point, what you want to do is, even if we go in and we test for it, we take, we have to wet the area, we have to tape it off a little bit and take a sample of it and take it to the lab. So
okay, if you're releasing all these fibers, when you go in and let's say you take out a popcorn ceiling, how do you handle, because now we've got, I mean, you're clearly going to have fibers in the air. So what do you do to control that?
Just imagine this room here. Okay, it's got a popcorn ceiling. This door here is going to be our entry and exit point. We come in, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a layer of poly on the floor all around.
Okay.
And we're going to roll it up on the wall about 2 or 3 feet.
Okay.
Okay, then we're going to go around all the walls and we're going to put another layer of poly. We're going to put that layer down. Okay, then we're going to come and put another layer on the floor. We're going to put another layer down. So you got 2 layers of poly on the wall. You got 2 layers of poly on the floor. Over here, you got a decon and an entry and exit. This is where you're going to come in. Now we set a negative air machine up in here. And what it does is it pulls the air.
I see.
And it exhausts. And these machines are HEPA filter machines, and they're specifically designed for this.
Gotcha.
So then you go in, you wet the material, you scrape everything off, you let it fall to the floor, or you catch it as it goes. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Okay. It's going to be wet.
And then you can just wrap up the whole thing. And then.
And we take that, after we do that, we clean the ceiling really good. Make sure. And then we wipe the interior of that first layer down. Then we fold that first layer onto itself. And then we fold the floor layer onto itself. But at that point, the only thing that's going to be left is the poly, because everything else is put into disposable bags. Got it. 6 mil plastic bags. So all the material that's on here, you actually put in bags. So the poly itself, and then you take some air samples and make sure everything's clean.
Gotcha. And
then you take down that last layer of poly, and
then you're good. We should be good to go.
Good to go. Yeah.
All right. So that's fascinating. I didn't even realize that's how that worked. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Let's move to mold. All sorts of different kinds of mold.
Right.
What kinds of molds should people be looking for in their homes? Is there different types of molds they should look for that they should pay attention to, that you go, oh, this could be a major problem? Or is all mold in general could be a problem and they maybe need to call you out?
Mold is a different mold. You're going to have some mold.
Right. Okay. Especially in North Carolina with humidity.
You're going to have mold. Right. For instance, if you're up in the mountains, and you're building a cabin or something up there, there's certain things you have to do now, or else you're going to have some mold issues up there because of just the location, things like that. But basically, unless you have something that's really growing and it's damp, wet area, then you're going to, anything else I wouldn't really worry about too much unless there's a reason for it not to be there. If you're creating a damp environment, you're leaving stuff laying around, even under your sink. If you have a minor drip or anything under there, you can have mold growing up under that area just by having a minor leak that you don't even know about, things like that.
Nobody's paying attention to that.
Right. Because, you stuff all your stuff up under there. You never really pay attention, but sometimes you wouldn't notice it till it starts coming out of the water if it was bad enough for dripping to the floor. But if you noticed, a lot of times when we go back in the homes, that we've noticed that where those 2 lines always come down, there's always places where there's mold that's been there, and we have to clean that up a lot.
I would imagine we had an issue once behind our washer where the washer connects to the wall.
Right.
And we saw we had mold back behind the wall.
So you had a leak there.
Yeah, there was a leak evidently there that we had to do. And so we saw mold. A lot of times people will see black colored mold on a wall. Do we know what that is, or is that is it something we probably need to remediate?
If you see mold in your house, and you might want to just, it's you're good. Like I said, when you're going to have some mold, but basically if I see mold, then I'm thinking, okay, I got some kind of issue going on.
Right.
I'm doing something to create this problem. Okay. If you open the bottom of your cabinets and you got mold, you got an issue. If you go into your bathroom and your exhaust fan is running, but you still look up at your ceiling. Sometimes the exhaust fan is not enough, especially in older homes that are smaller. Some of them don't even have an exhaust fan. Okay. So if you're taking a hot shower, you leave, you close the door, you're going to have, sometimes you'll get mold on the ceilings. And that's just from the heat and condensation of the shower, not being able to exhaust all the moisture out.
Right.
So,
I'm going to move to lead based paint, because we have an addendum that I know you're aware of in the state of North Carolina, that any home built prior to 1978, we have to file, you have an addendum that there could be lead based paint in the home. How much lead based paint do you see? Is it pretty common? How is it generally checked for?
You can take paint chips or any sample of the paint, as long as you get a good sample, maybe the size of your thumbnail or a little bigger.
Oh, okay.
And there's several labs you can take it to. You can buy home test kits at Lowe's that work pretty good.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's not an issue. And then now there's a lot of companies are using it's instrument that basically they touch the paint and it'll give a readout based on what it's reading there, so you can get instant readouts.
Is lead typically, we find it, I know it's found in paints in older homes. Is there any other places that we need to worry where lead may be, or is it pretty much just the paint that we're concerned with?
It's usually the paint.
Okay.
Pipes, lead pipes. You're not going to see a lot of older homes. Let's say maybe pre-50s, they used to use lead pipes, but the problem was eventually they had to replace them because they corroded up and got so rusted on the inside that the water wouldn't flow, or it flowed brown. So
remediation for lead paint, is it similar process to the asbestos remediation?
It is.
So we're going to put down our layers. We're going to scrape walls and
everybody's going to be in a Tyvek with respirators. Same thing with the asbestos. When the guys come through that decon, they come in, they have on a half-face respirator. In this case, it might be a full face because there's a difference between friable and non-friable. But anyway, same thing with lead. You set your machines up and control the dust, keep everything wet. And most of the time, it's probably better to tear it out and get rid of it.
Okay, so just tear it, just take the drywall and everything out.
Well, lead-based paint's probably not going to be on a lot of drywall, but if it is, I will tear it out. But like most of it's on the older homes in the trim, especially on the exterior, the wood trim, things like that. And inside, it'll be on the wood trim. A lot of that is probably just tear it out and get rid of it.
Don't waste your time with it. Just tear it out and do it. All right, so we've covered lead, we've covered asbestos, we've covered mold. What else does Carolina's environmental do? You handle drainage, I think, a little bit, or issues too, or as well?
Well, I'm trying to think. What we've tried to focus on the last couple of years mainly has been asbestos and underground storage tanks. Okay, because, as things shifted, like we do work in Lexington, North Carolina, where we actually, the office is at. We do work for Nippon Electric Glass. We handle their asbestos work and things like that. They're one of our clients there. But as overall, I mean, that's probably what we do the most of now is the asbestos and underground storage tanks.
What do you think some of the biggest mistakes that homeowners make when it comes to, looking at some of these things like tanks or asbestos or lead or mold? What do you think some of the biggest mistakes they make?
Well, if I was buying a home right now, the first thing I'd do if I was buying an older home is I would want to make sure that I don't have any underground storage tanks. We're finding these tanks in crawl spaces. Okay.
Really?
We're finding them in crawl spaces where they build additions over them. Okay. And people are coming up and they're saying, hey, we got this report. Here's a pipe sticking out of the ground. So we have to go in there and we dig down. Oh yeah. Well, you got a 550-gallon oil tank here that's full of oil. I think we've done probably 2 of those. And then people's built the foundations across them and, we've had to pump them out and cut the tanks out. Okay.
Under the foundation.
Yep. And then if it's contaminated, then so if I was buying this house, I want to make sure if there's an underground storage tank, I want a full report. I want it removed before I buy it. Okay. I don't want to if, ands, or buts. Get this tank out of the ground. I'm not going to use it because once you buy that house, you become liable for that tank. So if the next guy, if you decide to sell the house and he takes a soil test and it's positive, guess what? You're on the hook for the cleanup. Same thing with the ceilings. Anything, I would go as high as 1985.
Oh, really?
Yeah. just to be safe when it comes to anything dealing with asbestos. I would be suspicious of floors because if a house was built in 1960, they come in and put a new floor, and they just put the linoleum over top of the old linoleum. They didn't take it up. So sometimes you have 3 layers of linoleum
Right.
on
Yeah,
the
I've
floor.
seen that. Yeah.
Now, that first layer, it's probably going to be asbestos. Okay. And if you have a home 1950s and you look at those ceilings and this popcorn ceiling, I'd be suspicious of that. You want these things taken care of before you move in, and you're not trying to do anything that shouldn't be done, because as a homeowner and a buyer, who knows, asbestos doesn't happen overnight. Asbestosis, stuff like that, it takes years for that to develop. Those little bit of fibers you're dealing with up there, you might not notice that for 40, 50 years, or you might not never notice it.
Do you get involved with the home inspection sometimes?
We're licensed North Carolina home inspection.
Oh,
so
so you can be, you are an home inspector,
right? We're a North Carolina home inspector as well.
So you can go in and inspect home, and you can, and like, because these things happen a lot in the county,
right?
Occasionally they happen in the city, but they happen a lot in the county where there's not city water and sewer, or older homes that are now connected to city water and sewer. Nobody's really checking what was there before. So you can actually do that whole process of inspecting for that, as well as remediation.
Well, I try not to create any conflict of interest on anything.
Right.
But what I do when I'm not saying that every inspector, like, I'm kind of like, when I walk around a house, first thing I'm start looking for anyway is a tank. If it's an older house, that's just automatic to me. I start looking, and when you're in the crawl space, you're looking for copper lines that may be coming through from the outside that could have been a tank or something. So, and most home inspectors now are aware of that, and they're looking for the same thing. If it's an older home and you're in there looking, I don't really know about writing up asbestos in a report. I try to stay away from that. But if I see something that truly might be suspect, then I would make a note of it. But it's hard for you to call out a popcorn ceiling without actually having a test. Yeah.
Well, we've done our time already.
Okay.
You have been great. Would you tell the people how they can get a hold of Carolina's Environmental, the website, phone number? Let them know.
Right. Carolina's Environmental is www.carolinasenvironmental.com. And then again, the website for asbestos is Asbestos Extreme, and the website for the underground storage tank is EnviroTank. Feel free to call either one of those 800 numbers on there, or call me 336-309-4610. I don't mind taking the time to talk and let and explain to the homeowners what they're getting into, because we want you to be as informed as you can, because if you do ask us to do something for you, we want to make sure that that we're doing everything correctly, and you feel comfortable working with us.
Could you repeat that phone number one more time for them?
336-309-4610. And thank you very much. I enjoyed being here.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing this.
I was a little nervous, and I apologize.
You were great.
I wasn't expecting none of this today.
Well, no, you were fantastic. So this is fantastic. Folks, thanks for joining us. The show, you had a lot of choices. You chose us. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Wherever you're listening to the show on podcast, give us a 5-star review. And also, write something out. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube as well. I say to you all over the country, and that is this. Ciao